before we move into this flow, we're going to hear from Irene Vasquez. When she and I spoke, just to introduce, she is a member of the Southern Sierra Miwuk Nation, and she was introduced to us through our dear friend Tashina Parker, who's here today as well. And when I was thinking about land-based partnerships that elevate these aesthetics, or aesthetics that are land-based, the cornerstone of this is that you need access to materials. You need to be able to farm, you need to be able to gather, you need to be able to tend, to be able to make things that you eat, that you wear, that you use as medicine. And I was struck when I had these conversations with Irene that the Southern Sierra Miwuk Nation is not currently in a legal position to be able to do their traditional gathering. And so we have an opportunity. She's going to describe more about her master's thesis, which is on the restoration techniques and management practices of Thule pertaining to ecocultural use. She will also talk to us about the fact that her tribe has been fighting for 40 years for federal recognition as a sovereign nation. The Southern Sierra Miwuk territory is in what is known as the Western Sierra near Mariposa, as well as what we know as Yosemite National Park. And so you can imagine this is why the gathering isn't currently happening. So there's been this 40-year battle for status that would then allow for the tribe to be able to harvest, to be able to create baskets, regalia, the materials that create the land-based aesthetics, but access to land is what is so needed at this time. So in preparation for working with Irene, she sent us some bullet points for you to actually construct your own letter to the Department of the Interior. Handwritten or typed personal letters are needed. There's no way to virtually submit comments to the Department of the Interior to advocate for the tribe. These handwritten letters can be supported by, after you hear what Irene has to say, you can learn from her right now. And she's also provided bullet points so you can really target your letter. And she's also provided an example letter that one of her colleagues recently written. And we've provided clipboards, paper, pens, and envelopes with stamps. We are under a time crunch. All of these have to be postmarked by Monday. So today's your day. In the 2-hour break, if you have time to write your letter, that would be fantastic. And
it's been extended to May or to 2020.
It has? Okay. Okay, so all right. Thank you, Kat. More on the deadline soon. But we have a way to access, a way to speak your voice in relationship to this issue. And then after Irene speaks, we will go into a panel discussion on land-based aesthetics. Thank you. Irene, thank you for coming.
Wapasua. Good morning. Machiksasu. Kanyan o Yahenti Irene. That means hello, good morning. My name is Irene in Southern Sierra Miwuk, an endangered language and endangered culture. And we are this is my cousin Tashina Parker, and we're gonna open with a song, because this is how we've been taught to honor the ancestors of this land, as well as ask for permission from the Native people, the Coast Miwok here. And we ask for permission to speak about our culture and acknowledge, just give honoring to the people of here. And this is an acorn song, and it's appropriate, really good to sing right now because the acorn are finally falling right now. And you can close your eyes and kind of think about how people would gather acorn, and children would run around and pick up the acorn, and women would be there, and the men would be climbing the trees, hitting off the old branches, helping the tree be stronger, and with their knocking sticks, and the young, strong little boys and girls climbing the trees as well. Okay, and it goes like this. This is a clapper stick as well, and this is our musical instrument, and it's made out of elderberry, and we can talk more about that later, but here we go. Ya ya ho, ya ya hey. Ya ya ho, ya ya hey. Ya ya ho, ya ya hey. Hey willy way, oh hana. Hey willy way, oh hana. Ya ya ho, ya ya hey. Ya ya ho, ya ya hey. Ya ya ho, ya ya hey. Hey willy way, oh hana. Hey willy way, oh hana. Ya ya ho, ya ya hey. Ya ya ho, ya ya hey. Ya ya ho, ya ya hey. Hey willy way, oh hana. Hey willy way, oh hana. Ya ya ho, ya ya hey. Ya ya ho, ya ya hey. Ya ya ho, ya ya hey. Hey willy way, oh hana. Hey willy way, oh hana. Ya ya ho, ya ya hey. Ya ya ho, ya ya hey. Ya ya ho, ya ya hey. Hey willy way, oh hana. Hey willy way, oh hana. Thank you, Tashina.
Okay.
So, like I was introduced, I'm from Yosemite, Mariposa, and in our language, Awani means place of the gaping mouth, relating to our creation stories of a giant's mouth, Awa and Miwuk meaning mouth. And people from this valley have lived here for thousands of generations of years, and there are now 7 associated tribes that are within the park with different political statuses. But we are from the Southern Sierra Miwuk, and like Rebecca said, we have been petitioning for federal acknowledgement for close to 40 years, since 1982. And our council was formed in the 70s, and really we've been pursuing federal acknowledgement, but been working with the Park Service since its establishment. Our people have lived in Yosemite and Awani, caring for these lands forever with cultural burning, with gathering, with selectively harvesting to promote specific qualities for basketry, because baskets held water. There were watertight baskets that held water. They held our food. They carried our babies. I work in Yosemite as a biological science tech, and I finished my Master's of Science in Environmental Science and Natural Resource Management, and I went to school to purposely look at how we can restore tule, a native plant, for ecocultural purposes. So, because I believe tule is a really great, easy plant to learn basket twining with, and it's very user-friendly. And so that's what I did. This is Dr. Julia Parker, and that's Tashina's grandma, and she worked in Yosemite for 65 plus years as a cultural demonstrator, working to promote, carry on baskets and healing and promote cultural values. And she's been instrumental in helping people from all over the world understand and connect to Native people. So I want to put her up there to honor her and her family. I'm working today to restore native plants, not only for pollinators and ecosystem health, but also to restore reciprocal relationships that are also important for native health. So this is a slide. Up there is my hand picking some sour berries, and it's a delicious berry that we love and is abundant. But as you could see in the lower corner, there's sour berry sticks that have not been burned in I don't know how long. And this is from Ron Good's work, Mono in North Fork. but he burned actually in Mariposa County. And this is the after of straight sourberry sticks needed for our baskets. And that is from the baby cradle hood that is needed. So, as you can see, these things are important. We need to continue this so our children can be carried in baskets, because this is how we look through life, and looking through baskets and being nurtured and cared for. So burning, cultural burning, it's becoming a big word. It's, we all have experienced fires here in California. It's needed to come back, and we need to continue working with tribes and others and local communities to put fire on the landscape for good purposes. Good fire, we need more of that. And so this was from a TREX. I participated in a training exchange up on the Yurok Reservation in Wichpec, in which we burn for specific, to reduce hazardous fuels, but also to produce specific hazel qualities. And one of the women who I think spoke here maybe last year, Margot Robbins, she told me that the DNA structure of the hazel actually changes, alters after it's burned. And it just, there's so much that we have to learn still, and generate and keep going with this traditional knowledge that was there and has been, but is threatened. And baskets are, many tribes people are learning the art of basketry, but in places where my family is from, in Mariposa County, where you're not from a federally recognized tribe, it's hard to even be able to do anything but survive. This is an elder who recently passed, Jay Johnson. And in 2005, he did this cultural burn in Yosemite, the only one that has happened since fire exclusion occurred. And is now they're doing prescribed burns in Yosemite, but this was a specific cultural burn that he helped lead. Was the burn boss, and he burned for Tule in the meadow of in Yosemite Valley, the wettest meadow of Royal Arches, which is Kokokini, means baby basket hood in the valley. He was born in the old Indian village like my grandma in November. He would have been 88 years old, and he has passed without being federally recognized. He was a U.S. Marine. And he worked in Yosemite in the Park Service on forestry crews, taking care of the land and his people. He started our council. And his work is carrying on through us, but it's sad to see that he wasn't given the acknowledgement of their federal recognition. And the reason we're here, we're trying so hard for federal recognition, is because tribes who are federally recognized are able to express their sovereignty and pursue their own economic goals, apply for grants, for scholarships for their youth, for health benefits, for so many things, Indian Child Welfare Act. He is also instrumental with many of the elders in helping bring back ceremonies, revitalizing, bringing them out of hiding after our religions were not allowed for so many years until 1978 with the American Indian religious freedom. So Tashin and I have been raised in these ceremonies in Yosemite Valley, and since the 80s. I was born in 87, but that's why we're here today and working so hard to do this, because we know that our connection to this, our homeland, is important and powerful and healing. And I personally have benefited from being able to have the opportunity to work for restoration, to restore native ecosystems for ecosystem health, but what we're not doing is restoring native plants for cultural purposes. But I have been blessed to experience the healing of working on the land and tending and knowing that that's my responsibility, and I want to help promote that for our people and Native people and local people throughout the world. So there is a program that has started 3 years ago, Calaveras Healthy Impact Product Solutions, CHIPS, and their 5-member crew of Native people, and my brother's on it as well, and he's come so far. And it's been so rewarding to see him being able to work in our homeland and plant and do restoration. And it's just more of that is needed because the health of the land is tied to our health. And Native people disproportionately face higher health disparities than any other group. Diabetes, high heart, cholesterol, suicide, our children, our youth, ages 18 to 25 are the most, they're committing suicide higher than any other people, and it's really sad. So we got to be proud of who we are, and we got to keep doing this because it's not easy. And the federal acknowledgement process is a broken process, and we've been going through it for 40 years, and we did finally get a public comment extension with only a couple of days ago, where we have until now, May 20th of 2020, to get public comments in and respond back to the proposed finding. That was very alarming because 3 previous Office of Federal Acknowledgement whistleblowers wrote in and said that somehow a 200-page proposed finding of us meeting every single element of the criterion of being a positive turned into a 36 or 20-something page proposed finding of us only partially meeting an element of a criterion. So there's something fishy going on. What else did I want to say? We know about, we all want to think about why this is important for Indigenous people, but it's also related to the health of the land. Yosemite Valley, there's descriptions of it being like a park-like setting, of people being able to ride through the valley at a full gallop on a horseback without hitting limbs. There's our ancestor, our relative, Tatuya, talking about the valley being too dirty, too bushy in 1930s. Or maybe, I think she passed right around that time. We know that the land feels choked. It's the historical fire return interval in Yosemite Valley is 1.92 years. And since the 1930s, when they've been documented lightning-ignited fires in the valley, there hasn't been one single lightning-ignited fire. So those fires were anthropologically based. They were human-caused fires. It was needed to care for our oaks, which are our main food source, the acorn, the telele. It's still a food source. So when you're thinking about, restoring native plants, think about how we can restore those reciprocal relationships as well, because access is hard. And we live in a county, in Mariposa County, where we're landless. We have one little tiny allotment, and it's pretty rural and hard. And in Mariposa County, we make up 6%, Native people make up 6% of the population, yet we're 3 times disproportionately homeless. Homeless in our own homeland. As of 2016, a report that came out. So it's not, and the science is there. Indigenous practices created this valley, this beautiful valley, and it's, there's many sources where you could read of forgotten fires. There's lots of things out there, and I'm sure many of you know, and taking care of plants and all your fibers and things, the relationships that help you grow and heal. So I just want to talk about that, but there's more than that. Like institutionally, the Park Service is a great thing. Its ideology, though, is very based in Western ideas of no presence of man being there, and it's abrasive. And so it's sad that 100 years, after Park Service was established in 2016, they come out with a proposed of a ruling called the Gathering Policy of Plants and Plant Parts for Federally Recognized Tribes Only, which automatically prohibits non-federally recognized tribes from being able to apply for a permit through the NEPA process to gather plants in our own homelands where our grandparents were born in the old villages. It's wrong, and it's hard to be able to work in that environment with people who don't really understand the importance of people being able to continue those practices. And not that everyone doesn't know, but I work in an institution that is predominantly white, where people are not from Mariposa or Yosemite and aren't aware of Native cultures in the area, and so they commonly use erasive language. And I'm in it every week trying to stick up for my people and my family. That's saying, no, actually, maybe people being in the meadows is what used to occur, and we need to bring more of that back. And yes, we have over 4-point-something million visitors annually, and they do create their negative impacts, but we can also restore those negative impacts, and we should be doing more to restore reciprocal relationships between indigenous peoples. And so I have 15 minutes left, but I could answer questions, and I want to just talk about, how these holistic restoration implications about how our Native health, kind of recap about Native American health and well-being can improve with being able to access traditional gathering places, public lands, to continue these practices where it can be hard for some of us to do so because of limited means. And it's just funny that, NPS, they say they want to continue cultural continuance, but very contradictory policies that happen and have happened. We know we're learning more and more this wording about traditional ecological knowledge, traditional kind of being like a, back in the day kind of word, kind of antiquated, but it's also indigenous knowledge, and we need to continue generating it, and not just having it be from somewhere far in the past, but passing it on and allowing our younger people to experience it and grow and carry it further. And so with the indigenous techniques and management, we talk about adaptive management. Well, that's also including native management, tending, and being able to have people be able to burn for specific baskets or food, and with that, if we allow that to happen, hopefully our plants, we could really do what our mission intends to do in preserving natural and cultural resources for all future generations. And that is the mission of the Park Service. So we see that, there's a lot of effects of fires and, disturbance with invasive species. That's a really big thing to think about. But we could also see that different forms of management help create greater biodiversity, greater ecosystem resilience. This is what is needed to continue us into the future, to create healthier ecosystems, healthy society, healthier people, and relationships between everyone. And I think that's basically it. If you want to have questions, please come up to me and to Sheena, my cousin. Our public comment deadline was extended until May 20th of 2020. We do have a lot of work in responding to the Office of Federal Acknowledgement. You can read the petition on the website, Southern Sierra Miwuk Nation.org. Oh, and these are pictures from the study where I did my Thule research at Calusa National Wildlife Refuge, and burning, yeah, it helps. It helps the plants be stronger and greener and usable for basket purposes. And it was so funny because they burn for nesting purposes. And I had this idea. I was after a ceremony, nests, baskets. Oh my goodness! It was just really neat. So nests and baskets. And what are nests? They hold knowledge and future generations. That's what baskets are. They hold knowledge and customs important for future generations. Thank you. And maybe I should end with a song as well, because we're supposed to do that. But if you have any questions, we could do that. Do you want to sing one with me? Or a quick? Yeah, we could do that. That's a good questions, yeah. We'll do questions first. Hello.
Hi. Did you say that you were needing comments about your study?
No, not about my study, about acknowledging our people as a distinct community. So in the proposed finding, they said that we don't exist as a distinct community from 1986 to the present, which is really crazy because that's when we've been alive, and it's like kind of when we've been strongest. And we also are one of the most documented tribes there are out there in California. So all of this federal acknowledgement in California really exists because of those non-ratified treaties in the 1850s during the gold rush.
So my question more specifically is, after hearing this and feeling it, how can we support you by going to the site?
There's an address about how to write to the Office of Federal Acknowledgement and saying that these people have lived here for thousands of years. They should be allowed to gather in their ancestral homelands. It helps create ecosystem biodiversity. It's important for cultural continuance. It's important for their tribe to be able to access benefits for their health, for their elders, for their children. They're here. So the information with the proposed finding and many articles is available on the website that I helped create.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
If not mistaken, is this not on?
I don't know. Any other questions? Oh, hello.
What stereotypes do your work or your community face?
Oh, man.
The 1 minute question.
Yeah, I just got one yesterday about how I'm working in this. I just signed up for another board, Mariposa of Creative Placemaking, whatever. Anyways, they crossed out this line about longest inhabited community. It was an example from Arizona, and they're like, oh, that's just stupid. And I was just like, well, wait a second. That's from indigenous perspective. It is a long, longest continuously. It was a neat phrase, and it was just like erasive to me. So being erased is a stereotype. It's just like, oh, there's no one here before, and yet there's obsidian wherever you walk, or there's pounding holes, and that's one thing that is missing. We hear now Yosemite Valley is like so inundated with bus and traffic sounds, and it's like at one time there were sounds of women pounding acorn, and you'd hear the thump, 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 and the sounds of music, and it's just a very changed place. And they talk about maintaining sense of place. Well, it's not. So we're trying to make it healthy. Yeah.
Do you have the 200-page finding document on that website as opposed to the one right now?
No, we've requested a Freedom of Information Act for that, and they haven't supplied us back with any of that. So that was just from inside our previous OFA, previous Office of Federal Acknowledgement, people who worked, historians and cultural anthropologists who said that, and their public comments are up on the website as well, and you can read it, and it'll make you mad. And the proposed finding is written kind of very, it's just upsetting and hurtful. Yeah, especially when our family, we're still healing from the social ills of boarding schools, of assimilation policies, of child separation. We know those, we feel those. And it's continuing today with indigenous children as well, but that was only 2 generations ago. Our grandparents, they attend North Fork, Sherman, Stewart, generations of people's Indian children taken away. Yeah, hi, Kat.
Hi, Irene. I have had the privilege of working with your ancestors. I started working with the Southern Sierra Miwuk in the Yosemite region back in 1986. At that time, there was so much excitement. Nick Brocchini was chair of the American Indian Council of Mariposa County. Mm-hmm. He was certain that the Miwuk were going to be recognized, I met the lovely man, Jay Johnson, that you showed in the slide. Gentle man, so patient, certain that the Southern Sierra Miwuk were going to be recognized as a tribe. I saw reams and reams and reams of documents. Many people came in and helped the tribe to answer and go through all the hoops of the federal government year after year after year. And nothing happened, nothing happened, nothing happened. And it was frustrating to me, but I can only imagine what it is for all the different generations. And so we need all of you to write a letter, and you can't submit it through the internet. They don't even allow that. There's a reason for that, okay? So if you wanted to digitally send a letter of support, you can't do that. You can't do that. You have to send it by snail mail. But if all of us wrote letters of support, and if you, how many of you have been to Yosemite Valley? Raise your hands. Okay. If you love Yosemite Valley, you have to ask, who loved the land first? These people. Who tended the land first? Who took care of it? And I was wondering, Irene, if you could talk a little bit more about, well, the findings of the National Park Service with regard to the fact that they now consider Yosemite Valley a cultural landscape. And so if you could talk a little to that.
Okay. Yeah, so what Kat Anderson is referring to is the grove of oaks. And some, scientists now believe that those were actually intentionally planted by Native people for food. And even like the burning of the meadows occurred because of basket qualities, of hunting purposes, of aesthetic purposes, to be able to see through the landscape. So it is a cultural landscape, and that is directly tied to Native peoples, and we should be able to continue those traditions and caring for that place. And so it's not only our tribe is pursuing federal recognition, it's the Mono Lake Kutsadika people who are also pursuing federal recognition, and they're trying to go through a congressional route instead. But it's pretty hard that these people who have genealogically, are established through ancestors who were here since the first contact, have to prove so hard, and it's 2019.
I'm going to send a letter, and I'm going to send a letter, not just with the postage stamp that Fibershed provided, but certified return receipt signature required. And I'm going to send to Irene the name of the person who got my letter.
Thank you.
And I would recommend you all do the same.
Thanks. And I encourage you, wherever you live, to learn about the Native people in your areas and find out their struggles and their access to Native plants and how they are being incorporated into these restoration projects or whatever, because it's needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll say it.
We haven't practiced in a while. Thank you.